Hello, my dear friends. Tonight, I have a gentle and magical story for you, about a curious girl named Mira, and a little bit of moonlight that changed everything. Once upon a time, in a quiet valley surrounded by silver blue mountains, there was a tiny village where the nights were brighter than anywhere else in the world. That was because the moon loved that valley. Every evening, when it rose into the sky, it poured its soft light over the rooftops, the gardens, and the winding cobblestone paths. Flowers glowed faintly. Windows shimmered. Even the river sparkled like it was made of tiny stars. And in the smallest house at the very edge of the village lived a curious little girl named Mira. Mira loved the night. While other children hurried to bed, Mira liked to sit by her window and watch the moon climb higher and higher. She felt as if it were watching her too. One night, she noticed something unusual. A thin thread of moonlight slipped through her window and landed softly on her desk. It didn't disappear. It stayed there, glowing. Mira carefully climbed out of bed and touched it. The moonlight felt cool and silky, like a ribbon made of mist. Without really knowing why, she took a small glass jar from her shelf and gently guided the moonlight inside. The jar began to glow. Mira gasped. She had collected moonlight. The next night, she tried again. And again. Soon, her room was filled with tiny jars of silver light. Some glowed softly like candle flames. Others shimmered brightly like stars. Mira discovered something magical. Each jar held a different kind of moonlight. One jar made her feel brave. Another made her feel calm. Another made her giggle for no reason at all. She began to think of moonlight as something alive, something that carried feelings inside it. But one evening, something changed. The moon rose late. When it finally appeared, it looked pale and tired. Its glow was faint. The valley did not shimmer like it used to. Mira waited for the silver thread to slip into her room. It did not come. The next night, the moon was even dimmer. The river no longer sparkled. The flowers stopped glowing. The villagers began to whisper. Why are the nights so dark? Has the moon grown old? Is something wrong in the sky? Mira looked at her shelves. Dozens of jars shimmered gently. A strange thought crept into her mind. Had she taken too much? That night Mira couldn't sleep. She climbed onto her roof and stared at the fading moon. I'm sorry, she whispered. The wind stirred. And then, something extraordinary happened. A thin beam of light stretched down from the sky. Not into her room this time, but directly in front of her. The beam widened, forming a silver staircase made of pure moonlight. Mira's heart thumped. She hesitated only a moment before stepping onto the first glowing step. It felt firm beneath her feet. Up she climbed. Higher and higher, above the rooftops, above the mountains, above the clouds. The air grew cool and sparkled around her like floating dust. At the top of the staircase, she found herself standing on a vast silver plain. She was on the moon. The moon was not smooth and empty like she had imagined. It was full of glowing gardens, quiet lakes of liquid light, and tall crystal trees that chimed softly in the wind. And sitting beside one of those lakes was a tall, gentle figure made entirely of silver glow. Its eyes were deep and kind. You have come, the figure said softly. Are you the moon? Mira asked. I am its keeper. Mira looked down at her hands. I didn't mean to hurt it. I only collected a little light. The keeper smiled gently. Moonlight is not meant to be stored, they explained. It is meant to travel. It moves from the sky to the earth and back again, carrying feelings, dreams, and hopes. Mira felt her chest tighten. Did I stop it from traveling? Not completely, said the keeper. But when light is kept too long in jars, it grows tired. Mira imagined her shelves at home, lined with captured glow. I wanted to keep the beautiful feelings, she whispered. The keeper touched the surface of the silver lake. It rippled like silk. Feelings are not meant to be kept, they said. They are meant to be shared. Mira thought of the jar that made her feel brave. What if someone else needed bravery more than she did? She thought of the jar that made her calm. What if someone in the village was frightened tonight? The keeper stood and extended a hand. Will you return the light? Mira nodded. When she stepped back onto the silver staircase, something had changed. The jars she had collected were floating beside her, gently orbiting like tiny moons. She descended slowly. When she reached her rooftop, the village was wrapped in darkness. Mira took the first jar, the one that shimmered with courage, and opened it. The moonlight rose into the sky like a bird taking flight. As it spread across the village, a worried baker sleeping restlessly suddenly breathed easier. She opened another jar, the one filled with calm. The light drifted through the window of a house where a baby had been crying. The crying softened into peaceful sleep. One by one, Mira opened every jar. Laughter light, dream light, hope light. Each one soared upward, weaving back into the moon like silver threads returning home. With every jar she emptied, the moon grew brighter. The river shimmered again. The flowers began to glow. The rooftops sparkled. When the last jar was opened, Mira looked up. The moon shone more brilliantly than ever before. And something wonderful happened. A single thread of moonlight slipped down into her hands. She froze. Hadn't she just learned her lesson? The thread glowed warmly. She understood. This light was not for keeping. It was for giving. The next morning, Mira walked through the village with a small lantern. Inside the lantern was that single thread of moonlight. Whenever she saw someone sad, she let a tiny shimmer float free. Whenever someone was afraid, she let a small sparkle dance around them. She never stored the light again. She simply passed it on. And every night, the moon rose full and bright. Not because Mira collected it, but because she had learned to let it move freely through the world. Years later, when Mira was grown, the children of the village would ask her, "Is it true you once climbed to the moon?" She would smile and say, "No. The moon came down to teach me something." "And what was that?" they would ask. She would point to their chests. That the brightest light doesn't belong in jars. It belongs in hearts. And if you ever visit a quiet valley where the river sparkles like scattered stars, you might notice something special. On the brightest nights, the moonlight doesn't just shine. It seems to move gently from window to window, as if someone somewhere is still carefully sharing it. The end. And that's the story of Mira and the moonlight she learned to share. May your heart always shine kindly, and may your dreams glow softly tonight. I'll see you in our next magical tale.